Love at First Fight, Part 1, Memories. It was the 1st of March 2017. Arthur Wright lay there with only the sound of his heart monitor to break the silence. The 99-year-old war veteran's hospital bed was isolated, with Dr. Josephine sitting next to him. He awoke, gasping for breath, his heart racing. His eyes darted around the pristine white room. His head turned to face the doctor. His heartbeat slowed as he sunk his head back onto his pillow. The doctor peered over and said, "You're awake? Was it those nightmares again?" Arthur looked up. Yes, those dreams. They feel far too clear to just be dreams. They never stop returning, many nights for many decades, those memories. They're engraved in my brain. A tear trickled down his face. The doctor made eye contact with Arthur with a look of sorrow and sympathy. "Your stories break my heart," she said. "The tragedies you have had to go through. No one on this earth should ever have to experience or witness some of the events of your life. I must tell you, you have some visitors, a father and his 2 children. They said they'd like to give you some company." Through the door came a middle-aged man with 2 teenagers. "They are relatives of someone you knew, Arthur," the doctor explained. "They said they'd like to see you before your 100th birthday." "I haven't seen anyone familiar in many moons," Arthur muttered as he turned to face the family. The man took a seat with his 2 children. "It's David Thompson," he reintroduced himself. "And here are Sarah and Alex, my 2 children. You're their hero." "No one has ever said that to me," said Arthur. "We'd like to send you some love, Arthur, as we know you've been through. You deserve it." Tears rolled down Arthur's frail old cheeks at the sound of the word love. What his life had been missing. All the tragedies of his life flashed through his mind. Alex moved their chair closer to Arthur. "Are you okay?" they asked him. "Yes, I'm alright. I just haven't felt properly loved since I was a very young man." "My grandmother's cousin, Jamie, he used to tell us stories about you when I was a child," David added. "Your life story is very unique, but never fails to upset us. I'd never dream of wishing any of your life's tragedies on my worst enemies, Arthur." The memories of his friend rushed back into Arthur's head. Jamie Edison, one of the only friends I knew who ever understood me. I need to tell you all of my story firsthand, as aside from with Jamie, there's parts of my life I've always stayed away from telling people about. Jamie and I had promised each other that neither of us would tell anyone until the time felt right, until I was ready. I knew it was inevitable that time would come eventually, I just never knew when, but now I finally feel like I'm ready to tell my full story. "Why have you never told anyone?" inquired Sarah. "I feared no one would understand. It's about the most important person in my life." A tear dropped from his tired eyes. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," Sarah reassured him. "No, don't worry. All of you. None of you could ever upset me," reassured Arthur. "It's my vivid memories of what happened to the most wonderful person I could ever know that hurt more than anything anyone could do to me in this universe. Don't worry, I'll tell you my life story, and of the love of my life." Dr. Josephine, David, Alex and Sarah sat patiently as Arthur began to tell them about his tragic tale. Part 2. Growing Up. I was born on the 30th of September 1917, the penultimate year of World War I. I didn't live through most of World War I, but I can remember the aftermath. I remember for most of the first decade of my life seeing the struggles of rationing food and resources, and workers wherever I looked, planning and rebuilding the country. I remember the news articles, and slowly the country began to return to a similar world to what it once was. As a child, I loved researching the history and reasons as to why the First World War broke out. It was both fascinating and heartbreaking. The tens of thousands of innocent soldiers who lost their lives, and the 40 million civilians who were killed in the devastating 5 years of devastation. Families were torn apart and lives were destroyed. I always looked up to my soldiers as my heroes, who had fought for their lives to protect their country, and some had even lost them. It was always my dream to join the army, to make a difference in this world, to create peace, a new world. Of course, I always knew that would never happen. I attended an average school and lived in an average area. I was a nobody. I never thought I'd ever be recognised. Just a normal child going about a normal life in a normal area. However, something about me felt different. I never seemed to fit in with anyone at school, and it took me till my last year in school to find a loyal friend. Jamie, his name was. We had a lot in common. We always discussed our dreams, as we had similar hopes for our futures. So Throughout my childhood, I had toys and models of soldiers and military vehicles. I imagined I was the world's hero, creating peace across the globe. All I ever wanted was to be a warrior, but not for my own good or recognition, but so the world could live in a war-free, peaceful world, without fighting or battles. I was never selfish. I would always put others in front of myself, no matter whether they were my closest friends or my greatest foe. 1938, my 21st birthday, I believed the opportunity to join the British Army has arisen. I signed up and was accepted. When I entered the camp for the first time, the tent was filled with the sounds of conversations between soldiers who already knew each other. I'll always remember seeing their nervous and fearful expressions on their faces. Suddenly, the same nerve struck me harshly. The reality of being separated from my family for many months became a reality, and all my anxieties hit in unison. After that, all changed when I saw a familiar, rather nerve-stricken face in the corner of the tent. "Jamie!" I cried. We gave each other a warm hug. "It's so nice to see you here." I immediately felt the warmth of our friendship surround me. "Arthur," he said, "the relief of seeing you here. I was getting worried I wasn't going to know anyone." "Honestly, I felt the same, Jamie," I informed him. "I feared I'd feel out of place here, but seeing you has given me the familiarity I needed." Part 3. World War II. Britain declares war, written in bold capitals on the front of my newspaper. The 1st of September 1939, the date that began a chain of events that would change my life. My life flashed before my eyes. How could the world's most horrifying nightmare become a reality again? The whole world at war, for the second time in history. My heart ran at a speeding rate as I desperately tried to catch my escaping breath. As I slumped onto my bench, I sensed someone sitting next to me. The familiar warmth of Jamie's arm around my body, and his soothing voice in my ears. I turned my head to make eye contact with my friend. "It's the news," I said quietly. "Have you heard?" "Of course I have, Arthur," and I took a deep breath. "I'm scared. I'm frightened for our lives. I would never dream of wishing this upon anyone on this earth. I'm terrified of something happening with one of us. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, we only have each other," Jamie uttered with a constant look of fear. "Me too, Jamie, me too." I agreed. We hugged each other closely before going our separate ways to our sleeping quarters. A few days later, we were escorted to the trenches, a dismal place of damp floors, claustrophobic conditions, and riddled with disease. New faces had joined us as the government wanted all men 18 or over to join the army to fight in the war. A photo was taken by our trainer of all of us in a group as we left our camp. During the war, if one decided not to join the army, they were seen as a coward. I always understood why people wouldn't want to join the army. The horrors you live through, the loved ones you lose. Besides, the people creating the coward propaganda were middle-aged and upper-class people who would never have to live through anything like this. They could relax in their comfy little abodes, while us brittle soldiers didn't have anything to call a bed to spend the night in. Having spent almost a year in the army, I had had the time to become well-trained in using a rifle. On the second painful day in the trenches, we were all positioned with our rifles. As we were all instructed to shoot, panic struck me in the heart. All my memories of researching the First World War as a child flashed before me, and throughout all of the time, the innocent people would lose their lives, or loved ones rushed in out of my mind. My eye sockets began to flood, and I shut my eyes to trap every negative emotion inside my head, but it was too late. All my emotions exploded out of me like a nuclear bomb. My shaking hands dropped my rifle on the muddy floor. Tears began to escape my eyelids. My heart began to race at the fastest possible rate. Ah! The trench fell silent, the most deafening silence. My weakened body collapsed onto the floor. My eyes began to flicker open. "Are you okay?" said a voice from a blurry face in my vision. I blinked to wash the sea of tears from my eyes. "Take my hand." A hand reached out. I held their hands tightly as they carefully lifted my tired body off the dirty ground. I tried to face what I could only describe as the most beautiful face I'd ever seen on this planet. With a warm smile, he stated, "My name's Ben." He held his hand out. "Nice to meet you. What's your name?" "Arthur," I said nervously as I shook his hand. "My name's Arthur." I gazed into his wondrous eyes. "Lovely to meet you, Arthur. Now, how are you feeling? Do you need any support?" "No," I replied. "I think it's just nerves. Thank you so much for caring." Alright then, that's okay. But if you need anything, please let me know. I can always help, he said with a reassurance and a soft smile as he turned to walk away. Yes, of course. Thank you so much, I replied. All night I could only think of our magical encounter and when we would meet again, and this feeling could be captured once again. Part 4, Love at First Fight. The following day, Jamie and I were sitting in the trenches and discussing our first day at war. I already feel like there's no escape from this, feared Jamie. Hearing firing bombs day in and day out, and regretting joining, it feels like I've been trapped myself in a world of my nightmares. I feel the same, I agreed. All my dreams of joining the army, all throughout my childhood. I must have been so naive. It's not you who's naive, it's all those people who call people who refuse to join cowards, Arthur. It's not you or me. You're right, Jamie, come here. We gave each other a friendly hug of reassurance once again. But Jamie, I feel like I have something else to tell you, I said anxiously. I don't know how you'll see me after I tell you. Tell me, Arthur. Nothing can break apart our friendship, explained Jamie. Okay. Last night I met one of the new soldiers who joined at the start of the war, and I think I might have fallen in love, I stuttered. Oh my, Arthur, that's incredible, Jamie exclaimed. Promise me you won't tell anyone. You don't know what could happen to any of us if others find out. Of course, I understand. It's a world full of monsters out here, and any of one of them could destroy our dreams in 1 second. Thank you, Jamie. You're a perfect friend in every way, I said as we sat comfortably and gazed into the sunset sky. Part 5, Keeping My Biggest Secret. I had confessed to my best friend about my attraction to Ben. Could it stay between Jamie and me? I prayed every day that this secret could never find its way into the wrong possession. I had to find Ben. I needed to know where he was so I could gaze at his beauty and hear his soft voice once again. I asked every single person in the trenches if they knew where to find him, and it had taken till the very last person to know where he was. He's just down there, to your left. You should find him if you keep looking, replied the soldier. I don't think I've ever spoken to you before. How do you know Ben? I met him last night. We instantly became very close, I replied. Oh, alright then. I hope you find him alright. Thank you so much, I replied, as I headed to reunite with my destiny. I arrived to find Ben sitting on a crate with his head sunken into his hands. Ben, I asked, with a sense of concern in my voice. I came to talk to you about something I've been thinking. If you'd rather leave me alone, I will. Honestly, you seem in an awful state. Of course not, Arthur, Ben informed. Of course you can stay. You know, your presence is like the sun rising over gloom, your light illuminating this dreadful place of misery. Ben, that's beautiful. I never thought anyone in the world would say that to me, I said intently. Listen, Arthur, he said. Since we last met, I've seen things you would never dream of seeing. It was one of us, a soldier, went over into no man's land. I warned him not to, but he didn't take my advice. He said he had no choice. He said he had already lost everything else. I closed my eyes, but my ears couldn't resist hearing that dreadful bang. That landmine let off. It left my ears ringing. I heard it too, I replied. It was impossible not to. It made my body jump out of its skin, but of course I didn't see or know where it came from. But what you just told me has made it even more real. This could happen to any of us if we feel like we have no other option. Please don't say that. Always remember we have each other, added Ben. And I don't know how to say this, but it's something I've felt since we first laid eyes on each other, Arthur. He turned to face me as we gazed into the stars at each other's eyes. I love you. Tears began to flood from both of our eyes. The skies opened to shower down on the battlefield. Then, I love you too. Our faces soaked in tears and rain edged closer as our lips went in for a kiss. Felt like I'd been transported to another world, like heaven on earth. You're perfect, I said, as I looked back on the magic I'd just experienced. No, I'm not perfect, Arthur. Nobody in the universe is perfect, because imperfection is perfection, and perfection is imperfection. What makes humanity perfect as a species is that we're all different. It's all our individual imperfections that make us all different and unique.
And the definition of a perfect race that we'd all be the same people, doing the same things daily. Wouldn't that be a pointless life? Said Ben with a loving smile. Oh my, you're the most awesome person in existence. That's what I came here to tell you, that I love you. I love you so much. But in a world where a relationship could be killed at any time, it's so tough. Our eyes, once again, overflowing with tears. It hurts so badly, but we must keep our love between ourselves. Why can't people like us be accepted? We kissed again. I don't know, Arthur. I just don't know. Part 6. The end of all things. I discussed the previous evening's experience with Jamie the following morning. I hope you can make it work, said Jamie. Pray it's going to be alright for you both. I know the upsetting truth, people won't accept you, and that's the way it has always been, as I've known it, muttered Jamie. I hope someday that we can all live our lives and feel comfortable, they agreed. My life's meaning is hidden from all but 3 people out of 2 billion humans on this earth. No one outside of us would understand. That's the truth, the sad truth. I know unfortunately there will always be people in this world who won't be treated well for an aspect of themselves. Some just don't have a heart. But look at your situation. You're having to hide away because the world can't move forward, added Jamie. I couldn't agree more, I said, before Jamie and I went in for a hug. But that was soon interrupted by an unexpected appearance of Ben, running toward us with a hopeless expression on his face. Who's this? He asked. Oh, this is Jamie, my closest friend. I've known him since I was a child, I introduced him. You must be Ben, asked Jamie as they shook hands. Yes, I am. How do you know about me? He asked. Arthur's been telling me all about you. You sound like an incredible person. I'm sorry if you didn't know or knew. But from the bottom of my heart, no one will find out from me, replied Jamie. Oh, I hope no one will find out. But if you've had each other's trust for so long, then I hope I can trust you, Ben added. I need to talk to you, Arthur. It's something important. Over here. It is quiet. I anxiously followed Ben into a nearby quiet corner of the trench. Listen, Arthur, he began. Our relationship has grown over the past few days, but the way people like us get treated every day is disgusting. It's really affected me. I just feel the worst I ever have. I stood speechless, my heartbeat accelerating. I don't feel in place on this earth anymore, being hidden all the time. But Arthur, listen to me now and remember this forever. I still love you. I always have done and always will do. My eyes were overflowing with tears. I said, of course I will. I'll take this till the end. And with that we kissed, creating an everlasting memory that would stay, the most important in my life. He trudged over the trench wall. I anxiously waited to see what he was about to do. He told me, if I don't return, all I want you to know is, I will always love you. And trust me, we'll be reunited someday. Please don't leave me, I screamed. Arthur, it's the only way we can stop both of us from suffering. Just know I'll always be here, Ben told me. Farewell. Stunned, I tried to scream, but all my energy had been drained out from my heart's rapid beating. I stared into the battlefield. My eyes couldn't help it. My legs became quickly engaged, and I found myself climbing over the wall into no man's land. My love inside had gotten the better of me, and as Ben turned around to face me, I noticed a small camouflage disc on the ground. Please, Ben, you don't have to do this, I said, trying to keep my voice from collapsing through my tears. Arthur, Ben said, I love you so much, please remember. If how the world sees us improves, I'm sure there's someone out here who will understand you just as much as I do. Nobody can ever replace you, Ben. Can't lose you. Please, I beg you. I can't see a life without you, I spoke. You'll find a way, I'm sure. Just never forget, I'll always be up there in the clouds, said Ben. How could I ever forget one line of this, one line or one word? I love you too, Ben. I love you across the stars, I said to Ben, as he inched towards his fate. I couldn't resist trying anything to save my true love. I inched closer to Ben. Please, Arthur, you'll get caught in the blast. This is a landmine. It will destroy you just as much as me. But there won't be a blast, I said. I'll make sure we both leave here alive. Arthur, please. We'll meet again in the stars. Trust me. As I moved closer, Ben's foot edged close to the landmine. Time seemed to slow down by every second. My body shakes each step. Then all I can remember from the next second is an ear-penetrating bang, and then a deafening ringing. Then pitch-black blinding darkness. Part 7. Waking up to emptiness. In a bed, in a cool stone room, my eyes flickered open. I tried to lift my head, but I had no energy. I turned my head, and I was surrounded by dozens of aisles of hospital beds. A face appeared above me. "You're awake?" "Where am I?" I asked, still not fully aware of my surroundings. "British General Hospital," the figure said. "You've been unconscious for 2 weeks. It's a miracle we were fortunate enough to save you." I just managed to lift my head to look around, but I felt like something was missing. The figure introduced himself. "I'm Dr. Wilkinson. I've been designated to look after you while you're here in the hospital. You were in the British Army, weren't you?" "Yes, I was. How long till I can go back?" I asked. "Oh, I'm sorry to say I don't think you'll be good enough shape to go back for the foreseeable future, I'm afraid. Also, I have some news for you." He sighed in misery. "The good news is you'll be free to leave the hospital in a few days after we've completed some tests. But the bad news is," he took a deep breath, "I don't know how to say this, but we understand you were injured by a landmine, and your injuries weren't able to be recovered. We had to remove both of your legs." "What?" I asked, as I looked down at the bottom of my bed. I beheld the sight of 2 prosthetic legs. "Thank you for telling me," I asked, surprisingly not in shock by my new body. "When I go, can I go back to my family?" Dr. Wilkinson peered down and said, "Well, that leads me on to the other thing I must tell you. I received the news last night that your house was bombed, and we're sorry to announce both your parents were inside the house at the time, and they are no longer with us." My body had been drained of all of its energy, only enough to force tears out of my eyes. "Where have I got now?" I questioned, as I further broke down into tears. Most of what I had in my life had already crumbled, but now even what I still had left was gone too. "Have you got any other family I can speak to?" "We need to let someone know you're here," said Wilkinson. "There's my friend, Jamie. He's the only person I have left. He's still out there, fighting. Who knows what else he's seen," I replied. "What's his surname?" asked the doctor. "Edison," I answered. "Ah, Jamie Edison," said the doctor. "He was here 2 weeks ago, when you first arrived. He told us what he saw. He watched you run out over the top. He was so horrified he blacked out. We had to take him in to physically recover. He did quickly, but his memories are scarred." "It was all my fault," I said, through heavy tears. "I was trying to save my friend. I should have listened to him, but he told me I'd regret it." "Please don't say that," the doctor responded. "If you're close to someone, you have instinct to try and help them in every way possible. Jamie told me this friend meant an awful lot to you. I'm so sorry to hear everything you've been through." "He really was special," I replied, my tears still spilling out with tears. "Incredible, like no one else in the world. Do you know if they found anything where it all happened?" The doctor sighed as he prepared to break the news. "Unfortunately, they couldn't," he informed me. "The blast caused too much damage to leave anything." I sank hopelessly back into my bed. "I must tell you," said the doctor, "when Jamie was in hospital, his family came to see him. Jamie asked them to make a visit to make sure you were okay when you awoke. I'll send them a note. They've been wanting to see you since they found out what happened to you." "I'd love that, seeing people I'm close to," I said, with the first break of my tears since I awoke, accompanied by the closest I'd come to a smile in weeks. Part 8. A New Home. A day later, Dr. Wilkinson entered the room. "I'd like to bring in Lawrence and Jackie, Jamie's parents," he introduced them. "It's been so long since we've seen you," said Lawrence. "We were horrified when we found out what you'd been going through. Jamie asked all about you. He was devastated he couldn't speak to you before we set out back to the war. We were happy to see him for the first time in a while, but he said it always feels like there's something missing from his life without you." "Really?" I replied. "I hope he'll be alright out there." "I'm sure we'll get through it somehow," said Jackie. "We've been worried sick about him, but we're really proud of him, fighting for his life and his country." "Anyway, Doctor," asked Lawrence, "how long till Arthur's free to leave the hospital?" About 2 days, Wilkinson answered. Oh, that's great, replied Jackie. Now, Arthur, can we speak to you about something before we go? She asked. Of course, I replied. Why don't you come and live with us? Once you're free to leave the hospital, she added. We've got an extra room, added Lawrence. We're welcome to give you a new home for the time being. That sounds great. Can't thank you enough, I replied. And with that, they left the room. I dropped into sleep once again. Before I could leave the hospital, I had to take some practicing walking with my new prosthetic legs. Nobody would expect to have to learn to walk again, but this was certainly the least of my challenges I'd have to face. Besides, Dr. Wilkinson had mentioned how lucky I'd been to have access to prosthetic legs, or any sort of extensive healthcare like what I'd had in the hospital. It hurts to think of the hundreds of people who were stuck suffering. Once I left the hospital, I found Lawrence and Jackie waiting to collect me. The wind breathed cool air in my face through the open window. It froze as cold as my heart had been due to my losses. I arrived at the familiar sight of the quaint cottage my friend's parents had lived in for many years. Everybody out, asked Lawrence, and clambered out of the car and trudged towards the home. I remember many times visiting as a child. Welcome back, said Jackie. It's been years since we had you here. Honestly can't thank you enough for taking me in, I said with a smile. Nothing on us, replied Lawrence. Anyway, we won't want you to be waiting. I'm sure you're exhausted after the journey here. Your room's upstairs, first door on the right. Thanks, I added. I entered my room. Later that night, a storm raged outside in the woodland. Thunder crashed through the night sky, lightning flashed through the open windows and rain pelted the panes. I could barely shut my eyes. Sleep and peace finally found me, but that didn't last long. I woke up, gasping for breath, around 4 o'clock in the morning. Images of the dreadful explosion ran through my memory and across my mind. My head fell back into the bed. I rested my eyes. Every few nights this would repeat itself again and again, and I knew no one could help. I tried talking to Lawrence and Jackie about it. They tried to comfort me, but I knew nothing could erase these thoughts from my mind. It was always too difficult to find doctors who hadn't already got enough injuries to treat. Every few nights, I'd cry myself to sleep. I suffered. I felt like a shell of my former self, empty on the inside, isolated on the outside, thinking of Jamie, the only person I loved, still out there, life in danger. I suffered endlessly for days. Those dangers turned into weeks, then months, soon years, forced to live in a deadly and ruthless world. Part 9, Jamie's Return. 2nd of September 1945. I sat down for breakfast with Lawrence and Jackie, the radio on in the background. Suddenly, I heard the words, "War is over," emit from the radio. I gasped, my breath pattern increasing with excitement, and for the first time in years, positive tears streamed out my eyes. I looked over at Lawrence and Jackie. They were just the same. They sank into each other's arms. Tears rolled past my spine. I rubbed my eyes and began to feel the most positive emotions I've had since the day I met Ben. Every day I felt more positive, just waiting for the news to arise that Jamie would be returned. 9 months later, Jackie, Lawrence and I pulled up at the train station and waited patiently. My heart began thumping rapidly, not being able to take the mixture of every emotion racing around my body. Soon after, a passenger train of 5 carriages arrived at the station. My heartbeat and breathing further accelerated. The passengers began to leave the train carriages. Not holding in my excitement, I opened the door and leapt out of the car, watching every person crossing the bridge and descend the train station, back into the world of freedom. And there he was, the person I loved, whom I hadn't seen in almost 6 years. I turned to look through the front window of the car to see Jamie's parents in floods of tears. I looked back over at Jamie crossing the iron bridge at the train station. Then I looked back at his parents. Lawrence nodded slowly to me and I smiled emotionally. Then I ran faster than ever before. Tears streamed down each side of my face as I dropped to the concrete ground. As he neared the bottom of the stairs, Jamie spotted me. His jaw dropped and his eyes brightened, wide, and began to stream with tears. It felt like the people had begun to part at either side of me as I ran closer to him. He sped towards me. It felt like time had slowed down, just for us to spend it between us. We rapidly became closer, and we were able to make out each other more. We both stopped still, inches away from each other, tears are still streaming like waterfalls down our faces. "Hi," said Jamie. His hand came close to my cheek to wrap around my face. "Hi," I returned. It felt like we were isolated, just the two of us, that moment created just for us. We both went in for a special hug we had in our lives. The warmth of our friendship that had been missing filled the space around me. The freezing emptiness had been refilled with energy once again. "I've missed you so much," I said, trying to smile through my weeping. "You too," Jamie returned. "It's been so difficult without you. It's felt like something large in my life has been missing." I nodded, my emotions still racing laps around my body. "Come on, let's get out of here. Let's get back home," I said with a smile. Held out my hand. Jamie took me by the hand and held me tightly. We walked and looked at each other. He nodded, then ran cheerily to the car with a spring in our step, through the partying crowds and other families reuniting wherever we looked. Part 10. The World Formed from Love. The four of us pulled up in Jamie's parents' car. Throughout the journey home, we sat in silence, tears still rolling down our faces, trying to process how much this day would mean to us all. As we entered the house, Lawrence turned around to Jamie and said, "I can't believe we're all together once again." "Me neither," added Jackie. "We've been following the news every day on how the war is progressing. We've had nights where we haven't slept thinking about you, out there fighting on your own for your life. Our only child. You're a true hero and such a brave soul." I sat still in my seat at one corner of the table. I tried to conjure up something to say, thoughts running past each other in my mind. "How's it been for you here, Arthur?" asked Jamie. "It's been nice getting to know your parents," I replied. "I cannot thank them enough for taking me in, but every night I've been thinking about you and all the other soldiers out there. I've struggled to sleep, it's been tough." "It's been the same for me," added Jamie. "I've tried talking to other soldiers, but they're not the same as you. I hope we never have to be apart like this again." "You're so sweet," I smiled. "There's no one else like you either. You get me, like no one else ever has." "I feel like we're getting in the way here," said Jackie. "You can go upstairs if you like now." "Thank you, we'll come down again soon," replied Jamie. We stood up and turned to each other. Jamie held out his hand. "Take my hand," he spoke. I froze. Memories of my first encounter with Ben raced through my mind. My eyes began to fall into tunnel vision. But my draining body was kick-started back into life when the distant sound of Jamie uttering my name gradually became audibly closer. Before I quickly raised my head to him, saying, "Come on, follow me." I smiled and grabbed his hand. Together we sprinted through the door and up the stairs into his room. We both collapsed onto his bed and turned to face each other with smiles. "You know, I don't know what to say to you," I muttered. "I'm just trying to process you returning. It's forcing every emotion right in my heart." Jamie broke into a smile once again. "Me too," he spoke. "You've always been the best friend I could have ever asked for. And having you around has been a tough experience I never hoped to have to go through." We looked into each other's eyes and shared smiles for a while as we continued to attempt to process what was happening to us. We sat up in unison. Tears began to roll down my face again. I tried to wipe them away, but they kept cascading down. Jamie turned to face me again. "Are you okay?" he asked in a concerned tone. "Of course," I replied. My mind had finally figured out how to react to all my emotions, acting themselves all at once. Jamie began to speak. "If you're..." I moved close to him and reached my arms around his body to form a tight hug. Jamie looked down at me and smiled. I edged my face close to his and found my lips contacting his cheek. I closed my eyes and kissed his skin. I pulled my body back, the feeling of realisation punching me in the heart. "I'm so sorry," I began to say. "Don't apologise," said Jamie. "We've been so close for our whole lives. How could I ever leave you for anything?" "I really like you," I smiled softly. "I like you too," added Jamie. He too with a warm smile. Our heads fell back down to Jamie's bed as exhaustion filled our bodies. I shut my eyes and in an instant we were out. The next morning, I remember waking up from the most peaceful sleep I'd had in years, to the sweet sounds of birds chirping and the amber glow of the sunrise. I turned my head to make sure Jamie was still there. He turned to face me too. It was like we connected and knew how to look for each other in any situation. "Morning," I spoke. You too, replied Jamie with an affectionate smile. We sat up in unison. I drew the curtains to reveal the beautiful fluffy clouds reflecting and spreading the apricot sunlight across the landscape. It's such a beautiful day, I commented. It's perfect, agreed Jamie, after a long pause for admiring the daytime sky. Jamie turned his head to me and asked, "You know what happened last night?" "What happened last night?" I returned. "You know when you kissed me?" he whispered. "Honestly, you don't have to talk about that if you don't want to," I assured him. "No," began Jamie. "Can I kiss you?" "What?" I replied. I paused, taken aback, as I tried to let the information sink in. "I'm sorry, I didn't think he began. "Jamie," I interrupted, "remember what you told me last night?" "Tell you what?" he asked. "Don't apologise." I replied with an affectionate smile. "Can I kiss you too?" I asked. Jamie smiled back at me too. We leaned in to kiss each other's lips. We immediately connected. Our instincts kept us locked together. My heart was filled with a beautiful, soft, warm feeling as we wrapped our arms around each other. I closed my eyes and began to be fully immersed within our own bubble. It was like I'd temporarily been transported back away from the real world again, and I was finally back in the peaceful realm where love was the core holding it all together. But that world, so gorgeous, that I'd created and been able to escape to, began to crumble when memories came kicking me in the heart. Images of my first kiss with Ben, and I kissing him on the battlefield. Images of running to try and save his precious life. My vision began to flicker in and out of the real world. I tried my hardest to hold on to our kiss, but it was the image of the explosion from the landmine that haunted me so badly. I rapidly opened my eyes and let go of Jamie. My body, breathing heavily with a racing heartbeat and tears flowing down my cheeks, collapsed onto Jamie's bed. "It's all my fault," exclaimed Jamie. "I shouldn't have kissed you. I've upset you, haven't I?" "What do you mean it's all your fault?" I asked. "Why would you make me feel like this?" "It must have been me," muttered Jamie. "Please don't say that, Jamie. It's not you. It's the..." I paused. Just saying his name still made me anxious. It's the memories of Ben. It's still haunting me. "Oh my, I'm so sorry to hear that," he said empathetically. "Can I still give you a hug?" he asked. "Of course you can," I replied. And we did so, blossoming our friendship to love. Part 11. Loss. I felt warm and comfortable here. I finally had my best friend back. I felt closer to him than ever before, and I didn't know how I'd still be here if he wasn't there for me. These feelings felt unbreakable, like they would never be stopped by anyone or anything. It was when I turned my head to face the door to the bedroom that my heart stopped. "Jamie?" I said anxiously. "Look." He slowly turned his head to look through the door. There stood a teary-eyed Jackie and Lawrence, shaking their heads in disbelief, both looking extremely upset, disappointed and angry all at once. "Explain this," demanded Jackie. I stuttered Jamie. "We're excited to see each other," I said, my heart picking up speed again. "Shouldn't you be pleased for your own son being reunited with someone he's close to for the first time in nearly 6 years?" "Yes," snapped Lawrence, "but being close friends doesn't mean ruining my son." "What do you mean, ruined? I haven't changed since Arthur came back, have I?" "Yes you have, boy," screamed Lawrence once again. "Don't you think we saw you kissing earlier? I came up to call you for breakfast around 10 minutes ago, but I came into your disgusting, painful to say, romantic exchange." I was stunned by fright, terror and nerves, anticipating what they were going to say next. "You know what, Arthur?" began Jackie. "Get out of my house." "What?" I said, eyes flooding with tears, trapped out of my freedom. "I said, get out of my house," screamed Jackie at the top of her lungs. I sat there, not being able to move. "I mean now," screamed Jackie once again. "Mom," shouted Jamie, "you can't just leave my best friend standing in the wilderness. That's pure evil of you. You made him feel safe and now you're treating him like a monster." "How dare you speak to your own mother like that," yelled Lawrence. "You're calling her evil when the person you call your friend is trying to break you. I know you'd never done something before that gross if it wasn't for him." "He's not a monster," yelled Jamie, his eyes flooding with tears. "It's not Arthur's fault. I haven't changed one bit. I kissed her out of my own free will." "I don't want to hear your feeble excuses. Now we need to seriously talk about this, but first you need to leave right now, Arthur," screamed Lawrence. I slowly edged towards the door. "Oh, and for both of you, you can never see each other again." I shouldn't have to be grieving about my own child. I trudged down the staircase and towards the front door. Lawrence followed me, and Jamie was standing at the top of the stairs. I stopped and tried to smile at him. "What are you staring at? Get out now!" yelled Lawrence. He grabbed my arm extremely tightly. So tightly, it felt like he was going to crush my arm to the point where every bone was broken. He yanked my whole body out of the door into the heavy rain outside. He pulled my arm so much it burnt, so badly. I screamed in agony, and it echoed off all the other buildings in the village. I heard the door slam, and there I was, freezing cold, soaking wet and homeless. I briefly spotted Jamie staring through the window with his hands pressed up against the glass, but that was followed by him being dragged away by his parents.
Part 12. Homelessness. I was trapped inside the outside world. My eyes darted around, looking for where to go. I wrapped my arms around myself in a desperate attempt to keep warm. I began to walk aimlessly down the street, passing cosy houses with people living their lives, not having to be banished from everyone and everything they loved. I walked for a while, then the morning light had finally illuminated the sky now, and the few people who were walking the streets stared at me as I walked by. I was splashed with rainwater from every car that drove by, leaving me even more soaked through. After about 10 minutes of walking to no destination, I found a corner shop with an awning I could shelter under. I relaxed my body and rested my head up against the wall. I tried to shut my eyes, but all I saw was images of my friend's parents screaming in the treatment towards us. I stared down the road, covered in fog. An old car driving by. I thought I'd never see positive times again. Suddenly, I heard the bell on the door of the shop ring. Out came a resident of the village with 2 shopping bags. I slowly raised my head to see an older woman holding out a hand. In the palm of her hand was a shilling. "Buy some food and water from me," she said. "You look like you need it," she smiled. "Thank you so much," I replied. "Is there anything I can do for you?" "You go and buy some food and water. I'll be fine. You look like you need helping more than I do," she added, before beginning to trudge home through the rain. "Thanks," I replied. I stood up and made my way into the shop. I managed to buy myself a bottle of water and half a loaf of bread. The aftermath of the war had left the country in ruins, and rationing food was still in full force. I was lucky to have been living in a small village where not as many people visited the shop, so they were able to save food to sell. I returned outside, carrying my sustenance in a paper bag, and decided to walk down the road where I knew the local park was located, as I desired somewhere peaceful to eat and drink. After a short 5-minute walk, I arrived, and I slumped on a park bench under a willow tree and facing the beautiful lake. I gazed at my surroundings and immersed myself within nature. Sounds of the birds tweeting, squirrels and hedgehogs rustling in the bushes, and the sweet gushing of the water in a nearby stream. The sun began to peek through the silky white clouds, the rain began to cease, and the air became humid and metallic. In the middle of the lake, I spotted a multicoloured strip beginning to burst from the water. The colours became bright and became visible in a crescent shape, disappearing in the distance. It was one of the most beautiful formations I'd ever seen. It brightened up the daytime sky above me. It was comforting, and for a few minutes, it was like it was protecting me and taking my mind off everything negative I'd seen, heard and felt. I opened the paper bag and opened the bottle of water. It was cool and refreshing. I didn't drink as much as I wanted to save every drop, so it would last as long as possible. I remained sitting on the park bench for a while before standing and beginning to stroll towards the lake. I stared into the water. The sun reflected the individual ripples from the fish swimming around. With every aspect of nature I spotted, the more I felt a strange mixture of both relaxation from focusing on the quiet atmosphere, but also envy for how these creatures could live their lives without worrying about being accepted by society or having unescapable troubles. I watched as people of the village walked their dogs in peace, glancing at the natural beauty of the place. I opened the paper bag and took out the loaf of bread I had also purchased from the shop. I tore a rough slice and ate it, making sure to make the most of it while it lasted. I also knew I had to ration what little food I had left, as well as what I had to drink. I spent the rest of the day wandering around the perimeter of the park, finding all the hidden areas and formations that I could appreciate. As the night ended, my heart began to sink as I remembered I didn't have anywhere to sleep. I looked into the water and saw the moon reflecting off the surface. It was a sweet sight at first, but then memories began to project themselves onto the water. Everything awful that had ever happened to me flashed, like lightning on the water. It was these memories, like constantly coming back to attack me, and every time I had a brief escape,
that would return, even more painful every time. I screamed into the water. I'd always question why this chain of events kept being made longer and longer every time something positive would happen. It would be obliterated, and a new chain link of horrors would be added, making it heavier and further weighing down the positives. I found a park bench and frustratedly lay down to try and get some sleep. My body didn't care whether I was comfortable, just any type of rest to turn off at the end of the tiresome and excruciating day. I ended up crying myself to sleep relatively quickly. But a few hours later, I was abruptly awoken by the sound of police sirens.
Part 13. Locked away. Footsteps and torchlight bouncing off every tree in the park. My eyes darted around to find where this could be coming from. I spotted two figures in the distance, traipsing down the dirt path and towards me. Their silhouettes became more visible as they edged closer. It was clear they were wearing tall helmets and reflective police badges. Were they after me? All was confirmed when they stopped in their tracks about a metre away from the bench I was lighting on. "I think we found him," stated one to the other. I slowly gazed up to see two young police officers making direct contact with me. "You're under arrest," declared the officer on the right. I reluctantly stood up from my bench, my heart thumping again. "Hands behind your back," prompted the other police officer. He began to restrain me with handcuffs. What could I have done to have the police taking me away? I only had one possible idea why, but I didn't want to believe it. I was pulled away from the park and towards a police car. Sirens blared as we drove off, and the questions I had in my head still constantly lingered. I arrived at the police station. The police officer sat me down at the table for interviewing, to extract information from me to find out the truth. Although my heart was beating rapidly, I was far too tired to feel anywhere as near much of extent of emotion as I had previously. A police officer sat down opposite side of the table to me. "I'm here to interview this morning to find out your side of what I've already been told. I have my first question for you. Where were you yesterday morning?" asked the officer. "I was still living at my friend's parents' house," I replied. "And what are their names?" he asked. I paused. Even just saying their names was painful. "Jackie and Lawrence Edison," I replied. The police officer wrote a note on his clipboard. "And why went there last night?" he asked. I grieved for my friend. I tried to hold back tears, but some still escaped. I didn't want to let the information out, but I had to tell the truth. "I kissed their son," I spoke. "You what?" asked the police officer. "I kissed their son," I repeated. The police officer made another note on his clipboard. "Did you do anything else?" He coughed. "Romantic with him?" "No," I replied. "We just kissed. I know we shouldn't have, but we felt like something told me to." "Right then. Was there anything else that influenced you to carry out this act?" asked the officer. "I had feelings. I began. I liked him and he liked me. That's the truth. I can't help it." The police officer remained professional. "Right, so I think I've heard everything I need. I can sentence you to 2 years in prison for an instance of same-sex romantic exchange." I remained calm. "Okay," I said, knowing full well I was going to be imprisoned, but part of me almost felt relieved that I was going to have somewhere to sleep, eat and drink for a while. Soon after, I was restrained and escorted to have my mugshot picture taken. This was when I was given my uniform. Finally, I was taken to my cell. I watched as the police officer put his key into the door and turned the lock. I slumped onto the wooden platform that I was to call a bed and rested my head back onto the cool concrete wall. I looked around my room and processed the fact that this was going to be my life for the next 24 months. Why couldn't people like me, Jamie or Ben, just have our lives without our hearts' feelings being criminalised? This question still lingered on. It made my eyes burst into tears every time I pondered it, and this time was certainly no different. Part 14. Beginning life as a criminal. I was now seen as a criminal. Love had shaped my whole life, but now it had been the course of my fate. I watched police officers patrol, walking back and forth past each cell in the corridor. I remained in a thoughtful state the whole time I was in my cell that day, until the prisoners were all escorted to the cafeteria. The food was minimal, half a slice of bread and half a portion of meat, and a pot containing a limited number of vegetables. Half a cup of water was served with it, although we did have access to water in our cells. I wish we had a little more food, but I was still grateful for having some quantity. That night I tried to get to sleep, but of course sleeping on a wooden board in a cold stone building wasn't easy. We had a thin layer of duvet to wrap up in, but that didn't do much. But it felt slightly cosier.
Despite my best efforts, I had to suffer again that night from nightmares about everything again. I realised this would probably never go away if I was alone. These thoughts would only be reduced if I was with someone I loved. But gradually, I'd lost everyone. First my true love, then my parents, and finally my best friend. I dreaded every night from then on, as I knew suffering would always get the better of me. These days weren't the worst. We had 2 meals a day. Both weren't much different, and then we had an hour to get some fresh air outdoors. I used to stand up against the wall and watch the rest of the prisoners exercise in the dismal courtyard. I was too nervous to talk to anyone, partially because they all looked menacing to me, and I didn't want to imagine what crimes they'd committed. This became my routine for the next 2 weeks, but I didn't expect to see someone familiar being brought into the police station. Part 15, Not Alone. I was no longer alone in prison. Every morning when I woke up, I'd usually stand on my bed and look out the high barred window. Usually I couldn't see much, just the high grey stone wall of the prison. But this time was different. I spotted a familiar face. It was Jamie. I felt a mixture of excitement and concern. I had a strong feeling he'd been sent here for the same reason I had. Soon after, I stood by my cell door, waiting to see if he'd walk down my corridor. I spotted him coming through the door to the corridor. I stepped back and sat down on my bed to avoid drawing attention to myself. As he walked past, he had to look twice before realising it was definitely me. He looked stunned to see me sitting there. I looked up too. We smiled at each other, so surprised to see each other again, even if we were separated by iron bars. It was like time had briefly slowed down, but it didn't take long for the police officers to look at me and drag him away quickly. After all, we weren't allowed to be anywhere near each other, were we? This did nothing but confirm we were both here for the same reason. Of course, I knew we'd be separated in different areas of the prison, but just knowing I was back in the presence of my friend was comforting. Months passed, and the discomfort of being alone wore out. Of course, Jamie and I couldn't go outside and socialise at the same time, but just thinking about being in the same building as him made me still feel slightly better. I worried he might be alone socially too, but if he was, it meant neither of us were alone in how we felt. Maybe he thought that too. After a while, I eventually came used to the routine. I still had nightmares, and still dreaded sleeping on some nights, but it happened nowhere near as frequently. And after over a year of being behind bars, I began to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually, it'd been almost 18 months since my initial arrest, and I'd experienced nearly a year and a half of repetition. But on the 4th of December 1947, I had an unexpected visitor. A police officer walked me downstairs to my cell and stated, "Somebody wants to talk to you downstairs." I wondered for a few seconds who could want to talk to me. I followed the officer downstairs to the meeting room. I was seated in front of a woman who was about 10 years older than me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite tell where I'd seen her before. "I'm Anne," she introduced herself. I caught the name as soon as she said it. I remembered meeting her as a child. She was Jamie's cousin. "You might remember me from when I came over to Jamie's house a few times when you were a child," she added, confirming when I knew her from. "It's lovely to see you," I replied. But what have you come to see me about?" "I must tell you the whole story of why I'm here," she began, "and I also have something I could offer you when you leave." "Go ahead," I replied. "I'll listen." She began. "On the evening of the 10th of June last year, I heard a knocking on my front door. I wondered who it could be, as I didn't really get many visitors at my house. I stepped downstairs and unlocked the door. I stood on my doorstep with a freezing Jamie. I immediately let him in. This is one of my closest family members. I was extremely concerned for him. He told me he'd run away from home after they separated him from you, and that he'd called the police. My husband and I offered him to stay the night at mine. He was too considerate to agree at first, but I convinced him after a while. 2 weeks later though, he was put under arrest for 2 years, just like you. His parents called the police after they reported him missing. They came to our front door and found him out quickly. I visited every month since he arrived, and today my husband had the idea of asking you if you'd like to come to live with us. I spoke to Jamie about it and he agreed to. We can come and pick you up as soon as you're released if you want to come and live with us. Honestly, only if that's alright, I replied. I don't want to get in the way. Of course you won't, added Anne. You need somewhere to live. Well, thank you so much, I replied, stunned. Don't worry about it, Anne smiled. Just then, a nearby police officer walked into the room. Your time's up, he informed us. Goodbye, Anne, I spoke. Lovely to meet you again. You too, returned Anne. Goodbye, she waved. I sat back in my cell as the police officer locked the iron door. I couldn't believe the offer that I'd just been given. Could I finally start a new, fresh life after leaving prison, living in a new home once again? but this time with someone who still cared about me. Despite my identity, I'd had to hide from almost everyone I'd ever met.
Part 16. Safe and settled. The final day of prison was here, and I was escorted downstairs, through the corridor and toward the exit. I took one last look at the exterior of the building. I'd just spent the last 2 years inside of it, and now I was about to move on to the next stage of my life. Anne was waiting for me outside. She waved to signal me to come over. I ran over to her, further away from the front of the prison, and I finally felt a sense of freedom once again. "It's so nice to see you," she exclaimed. "It's lovely to see you too," I replied. "We'll have to have a false conversation about your life since I last saw you properly as a child. But first, I'm sure you'd like to get out of this place. Take a seat, we'll head straight to my house." I climbed into a car. We went away and off to her home. I moved across into the next county, in the hour drive from the prison building. I asked myself, could this finally be a new beginning? Of course, the negative aspects of my life were going to go and change, but neither were the positives, and all I'd lost could only live on through memories. Whilst all those memories could be painful a lot of the time, at least they hadn't been erased from my life. Memory's the only way to live on after death. Anne's husband stood in the doorway. As we approached, he introduced himself. "I'm Jacob," he held out his hand. "It's nice to meet you," I asked as we shook hands. "Come in," he offered, and Anne, Jacob and I stepped into their living room and took a seat. I felt comfortable, both physically and mentally. Their home had a warm atmosphere, welcoming and safe. Anne and Jacob knew I hadn't been accepted all my life, but despite that, they still ensured that I felt safe in their presence. "I'm so grateful you took me in," I said to break the silence. "As you know, the reason I've been in prison for the last 2 years, the world is stopping me from embracing my own personality. You understand more than most people I've met. I wouldn't give up kindness for anything, despite what the world does," replied Anne. "It's a force that cannot be overcome, no matter what anyone else does or says. It's always stronger than cruelty," agreed Jacob. "As you know, we took Jamie in, but 2 weeks later he was arrested. He was found after his parents reported him missing and ran away to us. He reluctantly gave up his reasons to the police and was taken away. He didn't want to risk keeping his secrets, but sometimes being completely open can be an even braver act. It's hard letting people know information they were never supposed to know. You did the exact same. You shouldn't have had to, but you did anyway. It's an awful world out there, and the amount you've done had to cope with suffering. We couldn't just let you continue to suffer." "You really do understand," I replied. "I feel extremely lucky to be living with you." I smiled and sank my head back into the back of the soft fabric sofa. We sat in silence for a few minutes. My eyes flickered open and I found myself awakening from sleep. I wondered what had happened and how much time had passed. "You're awake," announced Anne. "How long have you been asleep for?" I questioned. "About 2 hours," she said. "Jacob was almost finishing cooking the tea in the kitchen. You look worn out and lacking energy. Not long after our conversation, you went out." "I feel drained," I added. "I must have fallen asleep unconsciously." "You should have something to eat and go straight to bed," said Anne. "It's been a long day and you need rest." "Thank you," I said with a smile. "I hope you feel better in the morning," replied Anne, also with a kind smile. When we sat down to eat, I looked down at the meal before eating. It was this delicious looking meat pie and the best quality food I'd seen in months. I began to eat, making the most of every bite. I almost felt my body thank me for such a great feeling. I was really being cared for in this new home, and Anne and Jacob's kindness was spread around, making me feel welcome instantly. For dessert, Jacob had made a lovely fruit cake, which I also savoured after every last sweet crumb. The effort they put in to make me feel welcome, it really stood out. I was guided upstairs by Anne to my new bedroom. I lay on my comfortable bed, felt like heaven in contrast to the conditions of the bed in the prison cell. Anne turned the light off, and I must have been falling asleep instantly. The following morning, I woke up naturally late and felt extremely well slept. I strolled downstairs to find Anne speaking to someone on the telephone. I stepped out of the room and sat at the bottom of the stairs whilst I waited for her to finish. "Good morning," she said, with a smile as she spotted that I was awoke. "Good morning," I replied. "I just have a call from the police station. They've confirmed Jamie will be released in 2 weeks from today," she announced. "That's great," I replied, my excitement bubbling up inside me.
I thought all the times we'd spotted each other but then been pulled apart while we were in prison. I couldn't wait to be able to talk to him in person again finally. I can't wait to see him, exclaimed Anne. Me neither, I replied. I need him back in my life again. I'll bring him back from the prison when the day comes, added Anne. Can I come? I asked. I don't want to risk you both being seen in public together, especially after you've just been released. You never know what people could accuse you of. I wish I could do something to stop the way people have judged and seen you, but hopefully someday that will change, she replied. That's a good point, I agreed as I sank my head down. I'm sorry, said Anne. No, don't be, it's not your fault. Thank you for everything you've helped us so far, I smiled. Just then, Jacob entered with breakfast. What news? He asked, noticing the sweet sense of pure joy on our faces. Jamie's due to be released next week, replied Anne. That's great, but him and Arthur shouldn't have had to have gone to prison in the first place, or anything else in this situation, replied Jacob. You're right, agreed Anne. We can look forward to seeing our close family member, but we shouldn't have had to have been separated in the first place. We all lowered our heads and thought about Jacob's point. He was right, family shouldn't have to be pulled apart, and the people who loved in my family might not be blood, but they're still family. Part 17, Back Together. The date, 26th of June 1948, is one I will remember forever. I stared out of the window as Anne and Jacob pulled up out of the drive and departed into the foggy mist of the morning. I rested on the armchair in the living room. Soon after, my body was released from its resting state when I opened my eyes to the sound of the engine of the car approaching, before stopping in its tracks. My eyes flickered open and my heartbeat raced as I rushed to the window. I looked between the curtains to see Anne and Jacob stepping out of the front doors. Then, the unforgettable moment happened. Time seemed to slow down for me as Jamie emerged from the back of the car. The wind blew on his face, hard as he looked around, ready to walk into the house. It was at that moment he spotted me. He had to look twice to make sure he believed what he saw. I pressed my hand up against the glass window as I watched him move closer. He sped up and ran towards the window. He pressed his hands up against the glass on the other side, reflecting mine. Tears rolled down both of our faces, and I slowly raised my hand to wave. Hi, I mouthed. Jamie did the same. I watched Anne and Jacob stroll along the path towards the door. Jamie and I smiled at each other as he followed them round to the end of the house. The moment he headed through the door, he turned to face the door to the living room. The first time we'd seen each other without being separated by a barrier had arrived. He ran into the room and quickly wrapped his arms around me. I hugged him in return. Time seemed to slow down, and other sounds around us seemed to be drained out. I've missed you, said Jamie. I've missed you more, I replied. That's not possible, he returned. I've missed you more. We gazed into each other's eyes as we rained tears from our eyes. We reunited once again, I said. I've learnt to make the most of every second with you. Been pulled apart too many times. I'll try my best to not have to leave your life again this time, responded Jamie. I'll try to, I mirrored. Come with me, I said to Jamie. I held out my hand. We smiled at each other as we ran upstairs. We sat down in bed by the window. Did you get to know anyone, but we couldn't see each other? Asked Jamie. No, did you? I asked. No, responded Jamie. You know, I don't feel like I could talk to anyone apart from you, Anne and Jacob. Me too. You understand me. And so do they. It's tough. Every day I've had in prison was lonely, which led to pain. I'm glad we can talk about it together now, agreed Jamie. Now we're back in each other's lives. You're the best friend I could have ever asked for, I smiled kindly. So are you, Jamie replied. We sat in silence for a few minutes before Anne and Jacob knocked on the door. Can we come in? Asked Anne. Jamie and I looked at each other. Yes, we replied. The door opened and Anne and Jacob walked in. Jacob sat on the bed and Anne sat on the armchair in the room next to us. It's lovely to see you, said Anne. The times I've seen you together and the way you've spoken about each other in the past, I can tell you're close. We are, I nodded. Thank you for letting us be together. He's right for saying that. I should thank you too. It means the world. We couldn't have ever let you suffer like that, replied Anne. Come here, said Jacob. We all hugged each other. Here was my new home. I found a loving family to spend my life with.
Part 18, Lasting Love. The night passed. I slept well that night as it had been yet another long day, but this time it had been filled with more positive emotions.
I felt like everything that could have been revived was brought back into my life, and I felt safer than anywhere else. The following weeks passed quite easily. I was able to spend enough time with both Anne and Jacob when they were at home, and Jamie was always there when they went out to work or for a walk on their days off. Jamie and I would often join them going out for some fresh air. We decided to take turns sometimes, listening to Anne's advice about us not being able to be seen in public together. It pulled me down sometimes. We could not be in public, but we were still not accepted. However, as much as the thought of having to trap my true self within the home where I lived, I'd rather be able to spend time with Jamie only at home than not at all. After all, I wouldn't want to take any risk where I could be split apart once again. But in the past few weeks, my life has improved massively. It was far from perfect, and with my past weaved into my mind, it would never be perfect. Memories of Ben would still flash in front of me, and I couldn't escape it. I'd rather him living in my memory than being completely forgotten, but the memories of him would always begin with a smile, but then were followed by darkness. The sounds of the mine echoing in my mind, then the vision closing in. I'd begin to lose touch with the present. It was painful some nights, really painful. I woke up, 3 loving people were always there for me, who understood, who took me seriously. They knew memories could create long-lasting wounds that may never be healed, but I knew that being surrounded by love could heavily reduce them. Soon after, the days and weeks passed, and the sunrise of positivity began to slowly peak between the grey clouds of loneliness. We reached the summertime, and our walks we went on became much more scenic. The birds would sing in the morning sunrise, and the tender leaves of trees would elegantly sway in the subtle wind. The sky was now much more visible shade of teal, and the velvety clouds had faded. The summer reached its peak at the end of July, and the sun beamed its brightest as ever seen. The summer had been fabulous, but the most unexpected event was just around the corner, but Jamie and I didn't know about it yet. Part 19, the day that changed our lives. The 5th of August 1948, Jamie and I woke up and wished each other a good morning. We headed downstairs as usual to eat breakfast, but to our surprise found Anne and Jacob sitting next to each other, holding hands on the table, with their faces emotional in that way that combines fragments of every feeling. Last night, we found out some news you need to know about. Take a seat, said Anne. Jamie and I looked at each other, puzzled. This might be shocking to you, as it was for both of us. You may need some time to think about how this will change both of your lives, said Jacob. What could possibly be happening, I thought to myself. Jacob looked at Anne and nodded. I don't know any other way I can say this, she began. I'm pregnant. I remained seated, stunned. Oh my, I proclaimed. Wow, muttered Jamie. Would you like a hug? He asked. Of course, she stood up and began to walk towards Jamie. He gave her a warm hug followed by saying, We're here for you every step of this journey, aren't we, Arthur? Of course we are, I agreed, kindly smiling at her. Would you like a hug from me too, I asked. Of course, she said softly. I took my turn and hugged Anne too. This was going to be a unique kind of journey for all of us, and this was just the beginning. The next few days felt different, excited and nervous, emotions colliding to create unique and sometimes overwhelming feelings. My heart would thud every time I thought that in a few months' time I'd be part of a family who were raising a child. The months passed, and we were able to see Jamie's second cousin develop. Anne had been to a doctor and had found out the child was expected to be born May 1949. As we approached the spring of 1949, reality really sunk in. Very soon we'd be welcoming new life into our home. I was both excited to find out, but nerves of unknown of our new life being just around the corner. I certainly wasn't alone with this feeling though, as everyone else in the household was too. It was a first for all of us after all. We'd talk about it a lot, and that helped, knowing how each other felt about our unknown, but also exciting future together. On the 8th of May, Anne went into labour with the baby. My heart was beating rapidly. We immediately called in a midwife from the hospital, and our reality sank in even deeper and deeper every second and paced quicker. Anne lay on the bed and began to cry in agony. All her energy had been drained from her as she came close to delivering the baby. She held her breath and closed her eyes. My heart stopped. We were extremely thankful that the midwife couldn't have done a better job at helping comfort and care for her during the birth. The baby began to emerge. I looked at Jamie, eyes filled with tears. His head fell into my arms. I lowered my head and looked down at him. He looked up at me. We tried to smile through our tears to comfort each other, but the feelings in the room were too overwhelming. Time seemed to gradually slow down, and all sound was drained out of the room. Anne struggled to keep her breathing pattern at rest, but had no energy to make a sound. It was painful for all of us, but it was knowing something beautiful was to be the gift at the end of the journey that kept us all from further pain. The inevitable moment was here, and the most beautiful baby girl was born. Anne's breathing slowed to a more relaxed pace, and her head sank back onto the pillow. The room fell silent for a while. "She's gorgeous," chimed in an emotional Jacob through teary eyes. "She's beautiful," agreed Jamie and I in unison. "She?" asked Anne, her voice still rough from her energy being lost. She slowly lifted her head and smiled before falling back onto the bed. "Daisy," she uttered. They'd previously agreed on names. "Yes," replied Jacob. "A beautiful name for our beautiful daughter." Just saying this made us tear up again. We had welcomed a magnificent child into this world, and our lives would change forever. Part 20. Raising a Child. Anne and Jacob, the mother and father of Daisy Wilson. Our world had changed just as much as theirs. A child of a future generation who could grow, raised by loving, kind parents. To be a reason for change in this world. We would grow up with her and be proud of the awesome, mature person we'd helped raise. We were able to grow and develop with her. She'd be able to teach us things when she grew older. I knew she had perfect parents to become her own, unique but still kind-hearted young woman, just like her parents. As a whole family, we were able to experience new things together, became connected in a way we'd never have before, and being able to call ourselves a family. In 1967, Daisy turned 18. Her growth and development had amazed us all, and she was now an adult who could go on to do other amazing things and help people become more open-minded. Jamie and I saw hope in her, as us and many others may be able to find acceptance in the future. On the 21st of July 1967, we stepped towards our decriminalisation. News on that day stated that same-sex relationships were no longer completely illegal. These laws were far from perfect, and there were still unfair restrictions that made us still treated differently. But this came from people who felt like us, fighting, protesting. We've been involved in some of them, our pride, trying to search for acceptance, and now we edge close to being equal. We're 50 years old now, and only now had we been a step closer. It certainly took the edge off our restrictions though. Jamie and I could now more comfortably spend time together in public, without feeling anxious about getting caught by the wrong person. Daisy would smile when she saw us together. She was the light ignited by Anne and Jacob's kind souls. She found it just as important that we feel the same as her parents. I could see my quality of life brightening, my mood lifted, and I felt at peace. I hope this would last as long as it possibly could. Part 21. Life after Daisy left home. Daisy was now 18 and had reached the age where she was to leave home. She had met a partner named Tony. We had met him and his family a few times and got to know him quite well. Of course, it was difficult having to say goodbye. Daisy had changed our lives for various reasons. She had grown up with us, and now it was time for her to begin her own independent life. We'd go around and visit her some weekends. It was nice to see her, see how she was getting along with the new family and home. She was part of the kind people of her generation. She'd been resilient and kept that on her side all her life. Now we went our own separate ways, and it took some getting used to not seeing her every day. But we knew each of us had helped bring up the most awesome young person we could have ever imagined. In 1973, she announced she was pregnant with her and Tony's own child. Of course, this meant Anne and Jacob were to become grandparents. We really knew our generation was beginning to fade into the past now, which the thought of began to sink in more and more. It happens to everyone eventually, but despite how we'd been treated, I still felt melancholy. Anne and Jacob were now in their late 60s. They continued to do a fantastic job at looking after Jamie and I, but we still began to try and look out for them more and more. 1974 arrived, and Daisy gave birth to her son, David, on the 31st of July. We were able to see him a week later, once we'd witnessed the birth of another generation in the family, and we saw hope in his personality being raised by the warm hearts of Daisy and Tony. We lived our lives and watched each other grow for the following years. We'd visit Daisy and Tony and catch up with David's development, seeing him thrive in his childhood. Jamie and I felt like we were still comfortable in our best place to be. All remained positive. We felt better than ever. But in 1993, an unexpected event would change our lives forever.
Part 22. The Fate of Jacob Wilson. On the 22nd of September 1993, an unforeseen event would be the start of a chain of events that would massively affect our lives. I was awoken early in the morning by the sound of knocking on the bedroom door. The sun was only just peeking above the horizon and the sky was still a deep shade of orange. I glanced at the clock and the time was 5:30. I then spotted Anne, standing in the doorway looking panic-stricken. Worried, I quickly leapt out of bed and ran over to Anne. Jamie awoke too and spotted us standing there. He got out of his bed and quickly came over to us. Anne silently walked us over to her and Jacob's bedroom. It was clear something wasn't right. She opened the door and there lay a motionless Jacob. I didn't have the energy to make a sound. I just approached in horror with Anne and Jamie. Anne looked at us, hopeless. I knew a way I could try and help. "Can I check something?" I asked Anne. Still stunned, she nodded. I knelt and rested my hand on Jacob's wrist. To my relief, he had a pulse. I lifted my body from the ground. "I can confirm he's alive," I stated. "Could one of you call an ambulance?" Jamie was quick to the offer, picking up the phone and dialing 999. The paramedics were quick to the scene. We guided into the bedroom, and they informed us they needed to be taken to the hospital immediately. We arrived at the hospital soon after, and the paramedics were quick to rush his body to the hospital room. We were told to wait in the waiting room till further notice. It felt strange being back in a hospital. The sights and sounds came rushing back to me, and I feared my life, taking a turn for the worse once again. A doctor eventually came and met us in the waiting room. "We have a further update," she spoke. We sat there anxiously and listened. "It's not good news, I'm afraid." We all tried to hold back in the tears, but they always escaped. When we took him into the hospital, he was alive, just unconscious, but we've recently been informed that, despite our best efforts, he's just passed away. My heart sank deeper than the ocean floor. I could feel the pain everlasting through my body. We were all left speechless at that moment, and it really changed us. We were never the same again. The following week, a doctor visited to further update us on Jacob's death. We did some investigations and we found no particular medical conditions that could have caused his death. He told us, "We believe it was simply old age." Jacob Wilson had been pronounced dead, aged 86, on the 22nd of September 1993. The reality of the situation sank as deep as our hearts. The kind and loving man, who was a large part of how I'd coped for the past 5 decades, was no longer with us, and that was the sad but stone-cold truth. His funeral came 1 month later, and we gave a final goodbye to Jacob. It was a small room of people. Anne, Jamie, Daisy, Tony, David and I all paid our respects, but also celebrated his life. It was a difficult day to get through. We all had thought of a few words to say about Jacob, to summarise his personality. Nerves took over us, we had to stand up and speak, but we had to show Jacob the main reason we all loved him. Anne went first. "Jacob Thompson, my husband, now waltzing off into the afterlife," she sobbed. "He became a large part of my life when I met him in late 1949. The aftermath of World War II still hung over the country, but he made my life brighter and would always care for other people. He'd go out and support people who needed it. We all miss him dreadfully, but I know he spends his eternity in my heart." The family all had tears in their eyes. Jamie was next to go up. "My cousin-in-law, who saved me from suffering. Jacob, along with Anne, took me in after I lost contact with my parents. My life felt like it had hit rock bottom, but he was part of the reason light was brought back into it. They were far more supportive than my parents. They understood and listened to every word I said, and I felt healthier than I have moved in with them. I must just end on this. Thank you, Anne, for everything you've helped me with, and wherever you may be, thank you, Jacob," Jamie concluded. Deservedly kind words filled the room, and certainly highlighted why Jacob had put good into our lives. I was next to go and speak. Nerves tried to get the better of me, but I didn't let them. I walked over to the front and began to speak. "Jacob, a reason for my suffering stopping. I, and all the family, will miss him dreadfully. Connected us in his own unique way, and I know that life would be very different without him. Anne and Jacob took me in, just like Jamie, and they reunited with me and my lifelong best friend. I couldn't thank them enough, so thank you, Jacob. Thank you for everything." My eyes welled up with tears. I delivered my final line. I slumped back on down to my seat and waited to hear what Daisy, Tony and David were about to say. About Jacob.
Jacob's my loving father, began Daisy. He's one of the only reasons I have such a kind and wonderful son in David. My parents educated me and taught me important lessons that helped me understand things to eventually help understand and support people who need it. I'm thankful for his kindness being passed down through the family. I was introduced to Jacob when I met my father's wife, Daisy. He's the reason she's such a kind person. He and Anne were always there when we needed him whilst raising our beautiful son. We can assure you we both miss him and his love awfully, added Tony. Jacob was my grandfather. As a young child, I would always look forward to visiting him and Anne, where they would teach me interesting things, and are a large reason for my maturity. My mother's supportiveness came from them too. I feel lucky to have been raised in this family, and Jacob is part of the roots and lots of our great personalities. I'll miss him terribly, finished David. Jacob's memorial gave us one last time to send him off. We buried his ashes in a cemetery and waved goodbye to our loved one for the last time. I felt positive about the fact that the whole of our family remembered Jacob fondly, but no matter how much of a positive send-off we had, I felt like there was a huge gap in my life and heart now, and on the night of memorial, I had a nightmare. Part 23. Diagnosis. I knew I'd be taken more seriously now, so I went to the doctor to find out what had been causing these nightmares throughout my life. I felt like I was weak, like the safety net of good things in my life could be snapped by a negative trigger and come crashing back down into nightmares again. Before Jacob died, I'd been in a good place. I didn't have as many anxieties, but now he was gone, they'd returned with even more awful memories. That day the doctor diagnosed me with PTSD and depression, triggered by separation anxiety. I wasn't shocked. I knew what had been causing this in me or my entire life. I felt like I understood myself better. Of course, I'd never wish anyone to have to go through this, but I knew what had been caused by the events in my early life. By this time it was clear that more people had started to realise that soldiers who were frightened during the war weren't just cowards, but vessels being filled with memories that would affect a lifetime. That evening, I returned home to find Anne alone, and Jamie was nowhere to be seen. I sat down to comfort her. Jamie's gone to visit Daisy, she spoke. Do you know when he's coming back? I asked. He'll be back in the morning, she replied. Daisy's left to stay for the night. He just wanted to escape for a day. I understand. You should see a doctor, I spoke. I just visited the doctor and I've been officially diagnosed with PTSD and depression. I'm so sorry, said Anne. Thank you, I replied. I understand where those nightmares have been coming from now. Anne sat there in remorse. Can I give you a hug? I asked. Of course you can. Thank you. She solemnly smiled. I love you, I spoke. I love you too, she replied. I don't know what I'd do without you in my life. Me neither, I agreed with a comforting smile. The next morning, Jamie arrived back from Daisy and Tony's house. It was lovely to see him again, but he had something important to tell us. I have something I need to tell you both, he spoke. I haven't felt the same since everything that happened over last month. I need some sort of escape. So I visited Daisy and Tony to see David again, to have more people to talk to. They offered to take me in to live with them. What did you say? I asked, nervous for his answer. At first I was reluctant to say yes, as I didn't want to put pressure on them, and I know Anne needs both of us to be around. But after she said I'm free to stay overnight and come back here during the day, I considered it, and eventually said yes. So it means I'll still be here, just not in the evenings. I need some time to be on my own bubble, away from everything that's just happened to us. Can I tell you something? I asked. What's that? He returned. I'm glad you'd found somewhere to go. You feel safe. But I've never really told you properly, I began. When you're not around, I feel like there's something missing from my life. And on those nights, I have nightmares, where everything flashes before me like a bullet train. I found out why I've been getting those experiences today, from the doctor. I explained my diagnosis. I'm so sorry, answered Jamie. Can I tell you something? I've had similar experiences when you were in prison. They grew the strongest. Maybe I should see a doctor too, he replied. Whatever you think will help, I replied. You've been the best friend I could have ever asked for. I just want you to feel safe. I'll see a doctor tomorrow. I need to find out what's been causing my pain when you're not around. It sounds like you might have the same trigger as me too. I agreed. The doctor said it's separation anxiety. We've been inseparable all our lives, so it makes perfect sense when she told me that. Maybe it is. I want to find out for myself, but I don't want you to worry either. You know, I began, when what you've just said to me made me think. To be truly selfless, you must be a little selfish. Don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Knowing the reason something happens to you will make you feel much more comfortable. Those are deep words, reacted Jamie. I'll take them with me. I smiled at him, and that day, I made the most of him being around. Jamie left that evening, and that night I tried to control my mind into thinking about him being back the next morning. I managed to get a decent sleep that night. The doctor told me some advice, to take slow, deep breaths, and to try and think about my best memories, or if there was anything to look forward to. Those methods worked well, but the next morning, I'd hear of a very different experience from Jamie. Part 24, When Time Catches Age. Jamie came knocking on the door around noon the next day. I ran downstairs and turned the key before opening the door. I saw a stunned look on my friend's face. What happened? I stepped back, offering him to step inside. I shut the door and he said, "Last night, I couldn't make it without you. Following every path led me back to nightmares." "Does Daisy know how you felt?" I asked, concerned. "She tried her best to help, but nobody seems to be able to, apart from you. It's like you're a vital piece of the jigsaw of my life, and I'm not complete without you." "You need to see a doctor?" Like I asked, I questions. "Yes," replied Jamie, "I did." "What did they say?" I replied. "Same as you," he said. "I understand why. We've been through everything together, and I don't know how to live without you, but also without suffering." That's how I felt, I agreed. "But yesterday when I saw the doctor, she taught me a way to at least reduce those nightmares," I asked, "and to help, because you weren't going to be here overnight anymore. She taught me to focus on breathing rather than thoughts. It took me a while to practice concentration, but last night it worked. I love you, I really love you, but maybe it's time we learn what it's like to balance our time with loved ones. I'll still see you during the day, but I'm sure Daisy and Tony would love to spend time with you too." "You're right," said Jamie. "I was going to give up, but I need to push myself to gain your resilience. But I need to let you know, I love you too. Thank you for everything." He smiled. That day we enjoyed each other's company, and to my relief, Jamie felt much better about leaving that evening. The next morning Jamie returned and let me know how well his night went. "Thank you so much for your advice, it really helped last night." "You're welcome. I'm overjoyed to hear you're feeling better." "I agree with you," began Jamie. "When you know what's been causing suffering, the root of what's caused the problem will never change, but the problem can be reduced by just trying to draw attention away from it. Just know if anything else happens to you, I'm always here for you. That's what friends are for," I said with a smile. "I love you," said Jamie. I smiled again. "I love you too." I returned to my friend and we hugged each other warmly. After the events of that night, every day seemed to improve. Jamie and I could spend time together, but were able to have escapism on evenings to be spaced out after the events of the past. We would spend our days looking after Anne, making sure she was alright, and if she needed any help with anything. We did everything we could to try and make her life easier. She wasn't getting any younger, and with age we began to see her health requirements increase more and more. The care Jamie and I gave to her had become tougher, but we worked together as long as we could. Anne turned 19 in 1997. We held a party to celebrate. All the family gathered round to give us the best memories of her. It was really nice to remember all the great times we'd had with her. Anne and her family had been the kindest people I'd had in my life. It was a beautiful way to show that to them. But of course, Anne, the person who'd introduced me to become part of the family. The years passed, and eventually we had more doctors coming to look after Anne in ways we couldn't, because as a family we didn't have the resources ourselves to look after her fully anymore. In late 2000, Daisy and Tony kindly offered I move in with them, as Jamie and I were alright sharing the room. Of course, neither of us minded. We were the closest friends and loved each other's company. My kindness wanted me to hesitate, but I didn't know where else I'd go if it wasn't for Daisy and Tony, so I took it. But without a doubt, the main thing was that Anne's health was now being looked after by professionals. That's all that mattered to us. This was to allow Anne to comfortably move into a care home to have full-time treatment. It took the pressure off in a way. We could still go see her whenever, but also, she was in the right condition to be looked after by the nurses and carers who had more experience than we did. Anne moved into her new home in 2001. It was whilst we were planning her move and packing up her belongings to move with her. Daisy kindly offered to take me in. Of course, she had taken in Jamie, but now David had grown older, she had rooms that were available to stay in. It was difficult to say goodbye to what was formerly Anne and Jacob's house. The memories made would live on, of course, but it's the place that they were made we'd have to leave behind. I was extremely thankful for Daisy letting me live with her. She gave me a place to stay and feel comfortable after all. All went well. We spent time with the whole family for the following months and years, but there was an inevitable event that we hated to think about, and of course it came eventually, and it struck harshly. Part 25, The Inevitable Misfortune. In 2005, we heard the news none of us ever wanted. Anne passed on the 30th of September, aged 98. It was a shock to all of us. We knew the upsetting truth was that we had to make the most of every second we still had with her, and the reason for this now had arrived. Grief came with a shadow over all of us, creating darkness over all our lives. I noticed after we heard the news, nobody in the family seemed the same. All the joy seemed to have vanished. I'm sure they all thought the same about me too, though. That's the thing with grief. You don't feel like yourself for a long period of time, even though you know the person you've lost wouldn't want you suffering. Anne's loss was just as, or even more painful than Jacob's. After all, she was the only one I'd met as a child who came up with the idea to invite me to move in with her. Her funeral was a few weeks later, and we gathered around to say our kind words about the final family member of the elder generation. Jamie was first, then he said, "If it wasn't for Anne, I wouldn't be anywhere near as close to all of you as this part of the family, so wherever you are up there, I'll always love you." Then was me. Anne came to rescue me and came up with the idea to give my friend and I at home after we worried we wouldn't have a roof to live under. She made sure I had everything I needed. I wish I had one time to say a final thank you. Daisy was next. I'm grateful that the mother taught me that kindness is more important than anything else and shouldn't be sacrificed. It's a loving life lesson and I'll take it with me forever. Thanks, Mum, for bringing me up in this world. Tony was up fourth, and he kindly stated, "I love spending time with Anne. She's the reason my wonderful wife Daisy is as beautiful as she is. I formed the most awesome personality I know. Thank you. Kindness will be passed through the family." Finally, Anne's grandson, David, was to speak. "I love my grandmother. She was incredible to speak to, approachable, understanding and supportive. Thank you. The family really won't be the same without you." The funeral was a heartbreaking experience. The reality of losing Anne kept sinking in deeper and deeper. The power of grief is one of the strongest, and that night, even the techniques I've been using to prevent nightmares from happening the past few years didn't work. Every upsetting thing that happens to me adds to a pile of other tragic events in my mind. Then that night, a nightmare will encapsulate everything in that pile, but gets bigger every time. Jamie, Daisy, Tony and David seemed quieter than usual. I understood why they had changed. It was awful, because I knew that they'd always been there for me, but it felt like they weren't themselves, and I couldn't talk to them anymore. I decided to see a doctor again about my returning issues. It helped to an extent, just starting from the beginning, learning how to cope better with focusing and breathing, and attempt to distract them from trauma. It heavily reduced the nightmares, but they still came every few weeks or months. The main difference now, and when Jacob passed, is that it took an awful lot longer for the family to return to their old selves. Jacob's loss had a huge impact on our lives, but Anne's passing affected us more, mainly because she was the last of the two of them alive, and now she too could only live on through memories. The positive I too always look back on was that I'd spent so much time with both Anne and Jacob, meaning my memories were rich and clear. That's what we all learned eventually, and it helped us recover from our losses. My life felt very different from that point onward. Living with Daisy's family became the new normal, and David had previously moved out in 2002 when he turned 28. Jamie would often go to visit David, where he met his two children, Sarah and Alex. They were born in 2002, and they showed interest in Jamie's eventful life. I let Jamie know that he could talk to them about some of the things he's experienced with me, or what I've experienced. They were young family members, and I felt comfortable in them having the right to know about me. After all, I knew they might get to meet me at some point. Jamie and I would alternate in looking after Daisy. I had a feeling that Jamie would go and see David to escape from the cruel world, and I never suggested to go and see them myself because of that. The only story I wasn't ready to share yet was that of Ben's. I knew that time would come, not just at that time. Jamie was kind enough not to spread any information I wouldn't want to be shared yet. He was a wonderful friend I could trust. The next 11 years passed, and the nightmares eventually went away again completely. Those techniques the doctor had taught me worked extremely well. Then, at the end of 2016, I fell ill from old age. I was rushed to the hospital, but I haven't seen Daisy, Tony or Jamie since. They've sent me kind letters wishing me well, but they haven't been able to see me in person. In the letters they say they can't bear seeing me ill. It breaks my heart, and I wish I could tell them. I'd like to see them no matter what, but it's not their fault. They just can't bring themselves to see me near the end of my life. They love me, and I love them, so I understand. Some nights I stay awake and cry. Dr. Josephine has done a great comfort, but sometimes those nightmares have returned, and some nights every few weeks for the past 6 months. But that's what the present feels like, laying here on my bed, hoping someday to see the family, or even float away into the clouds up in the sky. I've just wanted to say goodbye to someone I love first. Part 26, The Present. Arthur, a war veteran who had parts left of his life unseen by anyone he'd met for 80 years. In the hospital, David, his children and the doctor had their eyes filled and overflowing with tears. The silence surrounded the room as the family processed the story they'd just heard as a whole. It was a moment that would forever be remembered by all of them. After a very long silence, David stated to Arthur, "I just need to say, I have huge respect for you. Being able to tell us all of this in full, it's a first-hand experience we'll take with us for the rest of our lives. We'd like to agree with our dad on that. We love you," added Sarah. "We hate to think of you not feeling love in your life," finished Alex. "It's been an emotional experience looking back, but I'm glad I've finally felt ready to tell you. And I know you're the right people, but can I ask you something?" asked Arthur. "Of course. My days are numbered now. Do you know if Daisy, Tony or Jamie would like to see me? I know they didn't want to see me ill. I wouldn't want them to know I feel alright. And I'm much better now I've let my story out." "Well, I've just had a message from Jamie. They've all decided to visit because we came. They should be arriving any minute now." "Really? I knew their kindness would return in person someday," said Arthur excitedly. Just then, the door opened. Daisy, Tony and Jamie emerged. They sobbed at the sight of each other, and they sat around the bed. "Hi," said Arthur. "Hello, Arthur," returned Jamie, welling up with his tears. Everyone's hearts in the room were racing at high speed with excitement to see each other again. "We're so sorry you haven't been here in person before today," spoke Jamie. "Don't worry about it. It's lovely to see you now. I can tell what I've been wanting to whilst I still can." "Please don't word it like that," reacted an extremely teary-eyed Alex. "Sorry to upset you, but I'm not going to be here forever, so can I tell you all something?" "Of course, Arthur," smiled Jamie. "I love all of you," began Arthur. "I've had many experiences of being split away from loved ones in my life, and we've all suffered losses. But we haven't had the chance to say our goodbyes in person a lot of times, and Arthur began to cry. "I want to say goodbye to all of you, and give you a chance to say goodbye to me. Your younger generations of kind people can change the world. I want to make sure stories like mine and Ben's can never happen to people in the future. We've already come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. I've now got my full story out there to you. You can tell it to anyone. It might help stop people in the world from going full circle. I've had a life of suffering, and I don't want your generation to have to go through the same experiences. So just remember this. I'll always be here, within your memories. Farewell. We'll see each other again someday." "Don't leave us," screamed Sarah, struggling to control her heartbeat. "It's time. Please don't cry. I'll always be here. You just won't be able to see me," said Arthur. He began to hallucinate Ben reaching out his hand within his mind. "Ben?" he asked. He smiled and shut his eyes. It was at that moment Arthur's heart monitor stopped. It was the inevitable ending to this time on Earth. Tears filled the room as the family sat in silence for a few moments. It was overwhelming sadness, the loss of a loved one, striking harshly once again. After a few minutes, David spoke through streaming eyes and said, He's found the people he's loved and lost. Ben, Nan, Grandad. He's back with all of them, up there in the clouds. Remember, his soul will never be gone. Alex and Sarah hugged their dad passionately with their love. Dr. Josephine smiled at them. The bittersweetness of Arthur's death was causing emotions to run wild. It was upsetting, but something everyone knew was the best way for Arthur to leave the world. Not alone. The family left the hospital that evening and spent the rest of the night in silence, with tears erupting with every emotion. The following morning, Daisy contacted David to share some unexpected news. Jamie, aged 99, passed away peacefully in his sleep that night. The news was unexpected, as Jamie seemed healthy, but his death was surely from old age. Maybe he knew all along, thought the family. That's why he went to see Arthur, to say his final goodbye. Still, the family mourned the passing of the two lifelong friends, and they were able to hold a joint funeral to bid farewell to the two of them, and so they could always be together for eternity, and the suffering had reached its conclusion. The family all worked together to develop a speech to say their final few words to Arthur and Jamie at their funeral. They would go on to publish this speech, and true to Arthur's final only wish, they would publish his story too. Part 27, The End of the Beginning. The year was 2024, and 7 years had passed since the events of Arthur's story being published. The point made within had caused hundreds of people to think about the suffering still happening in this world. David, Alex and Sarah were invited to a hall to read out Arthur's story. A large crowd of people could hear the story in person. The room was filled with people of all ages, waiting to hear the tragic and romantic tale of Arthur Wright. Alex and Sarah were now in their early 20s, and had become good, fabulous, kind-hearted adults, ready to make a change in this world. All they needed was the help of the public to spread the word of love. The host introduced the family. May we please welcome David, Alex and Sarah Thompson. A huge applause was given with their introduction. "Thank you," said Sarah, as she began the speech given at the funeral. "This is the life of Arthur Wright and his best friend in the world, Jamie Edison." "Jamie was my uncle," said David. "He was an amazing man, but had to live a life of suffering. His close friend, Arthur, lost his true love, Ben. Ben was killed during the Second World War," explained Alex. "This would affect Arthur for the rest of his life." David continued. "Arthur and Jamie would be split apart from each other so many times in their lives, but they knew they'd always be there, even if they couldn't see each other." Alex stated, "Their lives could never be at comfort or peace, not until the very end." Sarah ended the speech with, "They both passed away on the same night. That was the night Arthur let us story out to the world, and true to his wish, we'll now be telling you that story." The audience gave a huge applause. In the audience, Daisy and Tony sat there, looking on and sobbing. They nodded towards David and smiled. Then David began to speak. Arthur Wright was born on the 30th September 1917. The author listened intently to the whole story, gazing on and living through their emotions. They listened together and gave an emotional applause at the very end, filling the room with their tears of bittersweet feelings. The family knew that somewhere out there, lost loved ones stared down in awe, watching their family's accomplishment. Good night. Completed on the 24th of October, 2024 by Willow Perry.